Let's call the meeting to order of Thursday, February 26, 2015. It's about 5 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock. And item number 2, introductions. Let's start down here on my right, Dan, please.
I'm Daniel Tupper.
Doug Neely.
Sean Datchler.
Bob Burns.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler-Tice.
Dustin Moyes.
Denise Kai, staff.
Scott Archer, staff.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of minutes of our last meeting. Do we have any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none. All those in favor of approval, say aye, please.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Now is the time for any comments from citizens on items not on the agenda. Please come forward and tell us your name and nature of your business. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Burns and fellow committee members here. Brian Shaw, private citizen here tonight, I think. Well, it could actually be city commission stuff too, but I'll just do private guy tonight. So I was kind of looking through your goals here. They're 2014. And first of all, I wanted to say I really appreciate number 8, where you really want to be interactive with the city commission and stuff. We kind of look forward to that. And the second thing was I noticed that the number 2 item here was the RV master plan implementation. Did you folks happen to get to that this year, or I didn't know how many of these things got done because it was 2014, so didn't know.
Anybody want to speak to that item?
Yeah.
I think a master plan was created and adopted.
Okay.
It has not been implemented.
Okay. I was curious. We did our retreat, and one of the things that Scott and I kind of brought up was the North End waterfront plan, and so it's one of my particular items that I'm pursuing with on the commission and stuff. So when I saw that on here, I didn't know if there was something in particular that happened to that or not that might be available to me or something like that. So. So is that like in your minutes or something, or where could I see what maybe, just so I want to see if that's relevant to what I'm kind of thinking about doing and stuff.
So I can get that to you, Brian. It's basically just kind of upgrading the existing site. It's a proposal to do that, and it gives some specifics about that. And we did. This committee just had a work session and talked about reestablishing their 2015 goals, which are going to take up probably at the next meeting, and I think that's going to be one of the items that will continue to be talked about. So I can communicate that with you and let you know. I'll send you the drawing that was done. Yeah. Okay. And then I did mention that the commission had talked about that a little bit at the goal setting, and the ideas about exploring the revisiting the waterfront plan and some of that.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
We need to make sure that those things are connecting. So.
Mm-hmm. The interesting part of that is that there's probably going to be interest in that property next to McDonald's. That's for sale. And my interest obviously is I'm a little concerned about the fishermen and the parking, the overflow parking that we occasionally need from the events there at the Clackamas Park. And therefore, then we kind of have to look at the RV park to see, is that something we want to continue doing and stuff. So, like I said, I'm just speaking on by my behalf here and stuff. So,
one thing to look at that you might want to look at as you're looking at the plan with Scott is also look at the budget implications, because we were just talking, and that's the only thing that's revenue positive.
See, and that's where I want
to go.
Quite
interesting, and so Scott could get you some of those numbers. I think when we see the budget items, that one always shocked me.
Okay, well, that's where I'm at right now too. Yeah. So I was interested to see where that's at, because obviously, if it is in a positive situation, that's going to give it a little bit more flavor here. And so, if we have to look at other parking areas for like the fishermen on their with their trailers and their pickups and stuff, which I think we can accommodate, and maybe revisit Clackamas Park, which is kind of been your thing, and if I can sit in on that with you guys, whatever. So, but as far as reestablishing more parking there within the existing park, maybe that's available. So maybe that's what all you guys did already. So, okay, that's all I had. Yeah, thanks, you guys.
I was just going to comment
Yeah.
that, of course, we have the hotel motel tax, and if for example, a hotel were to go into that particular site, maybe, and I think you had your discussions on your goals is actually to look at that tax, but whether some of the infrastructural needs of the parks in that area could tap into the hotel and motel tax as a source of revenue there too.
Right. Yeah. That's that's.
And I noticed you in the goals, your goals, it looked like you were going to look at that particular issue of those monies, if I read that right.
Yeah. Well, it is on a personal basis. I was hoping we would kind of keep that property and keep it in the city and throw it in as a park or something, as part of the Clackamas Park, you know. But on the other side of this, now that I'm kind of wearing a different hat, I've got to look at that and say, well, if there's happens to be a hotel come in there and it's in the urban renewal district, and you get all the TIF and the hotel motel taxes off and stuff. Now I have to weigh that out, and so anyway, I was just curious about what your how you went about it when you discussed that. So anyway, I'll get with Scott and we'll see what happened on that. Great job, guys. Appreciate all your efforts. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is under general business. Annual goals. And we just had a work session and decided to continue on with some of the goals that we adopted for 2014 that weren't finished yet. Carry forward with some of those, and then to add some new ones. And we'll have some further language in the March meeting for possible adoption. And now that we have the city's goals, we'll make sure that they're linked where they ought to be linked, and there aren't any problems associated with them. So anybody else want to add to that? Okay, then we are on item 5B, Glen Oak and Filbert Run Parks Master Plan process. And Scott, you want to brief us on that?
Yeah, just an update to keep you posted on where we're at. We have, as you know, we completed all the public process for the master plan meetings, and we have now we're going to begin the actual adoption process. We have completed and submitted the application to our planning division, and that kind of really gets the ball rolling on that. I talked a little bit about this last time. We're seeking a comprehensive plan amendment versus doing an actual master plan within kind of more I'm talking in planning terms, which is a little bit of an easier way of going about adopting these plans. We are tentatively scheduled for the April 27th Planning Commission to present the plans for both parks. If the Planning Commission supports those and moves them forward, then the first presentation to the City Commission would then be at their meeting on May 6th. And it takes two commission meetings because it's an ordinance to change to do a comp plan amendment, so you have to have two readings. So the first one would be tentatively May 6th, and the next one would be the following meeting. If anything changes with any of the presentation with Planning Commission or the City Commission, then those dates have the potential to move later. And so that's where we're at. And if everything goes well, then these would be added as a comp plan amendment to our comprehensive plan by the end of May, roughly. And that would mean that we've got plans in place.
My comment, what that overall view was in terms of those plans. Scott presented that to the most recent Transportation Advisory Committee, so they have seen that too.
Right. Yeah, they requested that they see the plans just for transportation impacts And I presented that to them recently, and they didn't have any concerns. They were very supportive.
Right, and you had people from the neighborhood association saying they didn't think parking would be an issue. It's more of a neighborhood park, but also most of those houses have ample parking places for their residents, for their own residents, and so there's almost always room on the streets, and there's that stub street that goes into the park there too, and which could probably handle 4 or 5 vehicles, but even the neighbors did not perceive of really a parking issue in terms of what that master plan was showing.
Any other comments?
I have one.
Sean?
Scott, one thing that I had thought of over the last few weeks is, since we don't do these parks very often, Wesley Lynn Park, prior to its construction, had a large sign at the end of what's now Frontier Parkway that had the original master plan drawing on it, and it said the future site of. And so I think those things build energy. I know each summer when the Public Works starts fixing the roads, it actually makes me not hate the $9 or $10 that I pay on my water bill to the roads, because I'm seeing it go back in, and it seems like this might be a way to generate some energy on those parks. So I know we need to do a naming committee and get those named, but I think as soon as that's done, we should look for some sort of signage on both those sites.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Kind of keeps the ball rolling.
Any other comments? Okay, let's go to next item, 5C, Willamette Falls Legacy Project, standing update. And once again, Scott, that's...
Sure. So the partners, the regional partners, have issued a request for proposals. It's been advertised for the design and engineering services for the Riverwalk. It's drawing interest from consultants and design firms from not just the local region, but actually from across the United States. So this is a very high-profile project that it seems to be drawing a lot of interest from, I think, probably very highly qualified firms. So that should be exciting. Once the RFP process has been completed in the selection, so there will be a consultant or a team of consultants. There will be some discussion about scheduling a public outreach process to design the Riverwalk. And I know that this committee is interested in that, and you've expressed to me how do we stay involved in that. The outreach process will include opportunities to touch base with key stakeholder groups or committees such as PRAC and others. So I'm in these conversations with the staff that are involved with that, and I just can tell you that we'll be talking to you more about that as it's put into place. Right now, there's no specifics I can offer you more than that, but you'll have opportunities for additional input, and the design will be done in a public manner. So. Additionally, a couple other things that are going on. There's an approved contract with a cultural services landscape company to do archaeology work and oversight on the project. Very significant site, potentially archaeology stuff. So that'll be a requirement. So there's a firm on board for that. And then there's also been a firm hired to perform some scoping of the maintenance and operations issues. So we're already beginning the discussions about what the maintenance and operations are going to look like and how they're going to be funded and what we're going to do to deal with that and that kind of thing. So again, we'll be talking more about this as we move down the road, but those types of things are underway and moving forward. The one other kind of major thing I want to make you aware of is that we discussed this with you last year. PRAC was involved. Some of you may not have been on the committee or been involved in the discussions at that time, but we're in the process of amending our Metro local share agreement with that program, whereby we receive funds through the last major Metro open spaces bond to do some things locally. We spent some of those monies. The two projects that we did with those monies are purchasing Glen Oak Park. We purchased part of the purchase was paid for with those monies, and then a purchase of some open space in the Kanema neighborhood. And there's still roughly about, I think it's $330,000 and some change left last year there was some significant discussion about that, and I think you were involved in some of those discussions, and you were supportive of that. So some of those processes have taken a while to get to the point of actually amending that agreement, because we're now going to start putting funding into what I just described to you, the design process and so forth. So the city commission will be taking action on amending that local share program agreement to use the remainder of those funds for the Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and the commission is taking this action on March 18th. So just want to make you aware of that. If you had any concerns or additional discussion or what have you, it would be appropriate to make sure that I'm aware of that so I can pass that along. But
Are those the same funds that actually this committee discussed before and put that as a priority in terms of the use of those funds?
yes,
So
several
this-
years ago, but yes.
Yeah. Well, actually,
Well, originally several years ago, and then recently last
recently, I
That's
think about a year, within the last year,
Within the
I
last
think
year.
you came before the commission. So
is
those are
correct.
the same monies we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, what I was talking about was originally PrAC helped design that priorities list with the bond, which actually goes back to, I think, 2006. So,
Yeah.
yes, and then more recently in the last year,
We talked about
PrAC
it.
was very much involved in that discussion.
Right.
Any other questions or comments? Sean?
So, my recollection of that conversation was we started out in an executive session where there was an idea to put together a deal to purchase property. And that $300,000 was going to go towards the purchase of a property that one of the three legs bailed out the next day, and that all fell through. And so I think I wouldn't necessarily characterize my opinion of those monies going to this project generally along the same lines as that was saving this project from falling flat on its face, we thought, at that point.
You're talking about those properties along Kenema?
No. There was the idea where Metro, Clackamas County, I mean, we can talk about this right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So we all met here in an executive session. You were the mayor, and the idea was that the city of Oregon City, Clackamas County, and Metro was going to buy the property instead of the person who bought it, because we had concerns. And so we all sat here, and I remember sitting there telling you, I'm fully supportive of giving you $300,000 to make this project happen, because we otherwise thought it was going to go to
Okay, that's what I was saying.
there was going to be troubles. And so I'm just saying now I'm not characterizing giving $300,000 in the same light. There was a different tone that day. And so now is $300,000 the best place to be spent on that project?
Yeah, I don't recall exactly, so I'm going to be careful about what I respond to that in terms of my recollection and in your recollection. Generally, I believe the intent, and you can tell me if this is not what you're thinking, or other members, of course, but I think the general intent was that and it still has to meet the parameters of the use of that program, which is, basically for acquiring properties or doing things that meet the parameters and the intent of the bond measure language. So that still has to be met to use the money, and that's being addressed. But was to assist in acquiring the right of ways and the access and developing that. I mean, the goal is to create the access to the falls, and that's, I think, still what we were discussing. I think you're correct that there were some things about the ownership at that time, and that's a part where I'm a little fuzzy on exactly what we discussed. But
Well, and I guess all I'm asking now is I'm seeing a $30 million project, and we've got $300,000, which is a huge amount to us. But I'm wondering if it maybe could be spent better elsewhere, where we get 100% of something rather than 0.01% of something that's already going to happen, and the ball's already rolling on. I'm thinking out loud. I'm asking these questions. I'm not giving an opinion.
Let me just comment. I think it'd be good to look at those minutes when you made the presentation. That's the one I was actually talking about, where you made the presentation. because, I mean, we had a series of bids that were going through and had been made even at the time you were making your presentation. I mean, so I don't think, and we were not a bidder at any point in that process. There were four iterations of developers that had put offers on the table, and that was ongoing at that particular time. I don't know at that particular time. I don't think the county was going to buy into purchasing the property anyway. I think it'd be good to look at what was presented to the commission at that particular time. What I think is kind of critical, though, is when the city and metro seek funds, there's always the anticipation that those entities are also going to come up with monies. And I guess my feeling from that meeting was that could be a source where the city is making its contribution in the process.
That's correct.
So that's sort of the way I've understood it. And so I kind of take a look at maybe the minutes there and see maybe how it was interpreted by the people that were there.
Yeah, I'll
The
do that.
overbid process was what I was talking about. Do you remember
Oh, right.
the overbid, where we were trying to overbid on the last day before we knew there was one
Okay.
willing bidder, and
Yeah.
then we went to the overbid. That's the conversation I'm
Okay.
referring to.
Yeah,
And
I
so we
recall
all
what
sat
you're
in
saying.
that executive session. Basically,
Okay.
it was like we've got 18 hours to put together this,
Okay.
and then it went to Clackamas County Commission, and they had
Yeah.
political reasons that they
Yeah.
didn't vote, and Metro and the City Commission already voted in favor of it, and I think Metro was in favor of it,
Actually, Metro,
or they never got to vote.
it never got to the council then.
Yeah, and Clackamas County turned it down.
Well, we can review any of the minutes from both the
just
commission
curious.
meeting that night,
Yeah.
because the commission also brought it then back into an open discussion, and then you talked about it, I think, at some subsequent meetings.
But if that's, if that's a point of confusion, maybe we ought to go back and look at that.
My recollection is it was a lengthy discussion, and it came down to somebody asked the question if these funds might be available, and I think it was expressed as an option that Oregon City had to put up some of the money.
Well, that I think goes to what Doug was talking about. I think an important piece of this is that so we're trying to put together pretty close to a $30 million package. Now the first phase here is just the design piece. The $30 million would get the thing built, building a world-class river walk with access to the falls. This would be incorporated into that first phase, which is doing design and access, and then eventually it gets developed. The partners, specifically the state, has contributed or is pledged and committed to contributing $5 million. The Metro is pledging to commit $5 million. There's some other bits and pieces, and the city has attempted to figure out where can we put our piece of this and make a contribution. I think it's really important that we do that, and this was identified as one of those sources that makes sense. It fits the parameters, and it's available, and so I hear what you're saying, Sean, and I think I'll look into that. But it is it's not an insignificant amount in terms of going towards getting this first step accomplished, which is really a critical thing. So, I'll get back to you on some.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving my opinion, definitely. I'm just kind of
I
asking
hear
for
what you're saying.
clarification.
Yeah, no, it's good to make sure. But I'll go back and look at all the minutes and see if we're.
And maybe we need to come back and, maybe the group as a whole next month would like to reaffirm their unanimous support of that. I mean, there's other angles that we may help guide the commission on spending it rather than them spending our money without a discussion, if you will.
Yeah, there's a timing issue in that the commission it's tentatively right now planned to. What was the date I just told you? Commission is planning to take that action on March 18th at their March 18th meeting.
That's before
And I
me.
think there are some timing reasons why it's occurring at, by that date, and that's before we meet again.
I think,
So,
given that's the case, I'm going to make a motion that those monies that we talked about from the Nature Neighborhoods, it was Nature Neighborhoods? No, it was a city. No, it was a city.
it's called the local share.
The local
program.
share piece actually be committed to the legacy projects, public access, and I'll put that as a motion, so that, give an indication we're all on board on that.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second that we designate the, is it 300,000? Is that what it is?
I would just say the remaining local share funds.
The-
It's I think it's around 330, but I
The
don't want to.
remaining local share money toward the Willamette Legacy Project Riverwalk. Does that capture it?
That is.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Unanimously passed. Anything else on that item?
No, thank you. Who was the seconder on that? I have to record that in a minute.
Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Next item is the progress report on the Ermitinger House project. And
Ms. Kai is going to give you a
Denise.
report on that.
Oh, glossy color pictures.
I brought you pictures because I say so much. The house has been under construction for a while. We're looking at a projection of mid-March. It may extend a little bit further. As we go through the project, we start finding things that we're unaware of until you open things up. But I brought these pictures because they kind of tell a story. The very first picture you see are the roof trusses and some of the venting. And we took the old roof off, and the preservation portion is the old tin roof. So underneath those trusses, you'll see little squares. That is actually the old historic tin roof. And it's actually in really good shape. So unbeknownst to us with all the issues of the house, that is something that was well preserved within the structure of the house itself. So we only got a few minutes before they were going to throw insulation down and cap the roof because we had a very short window of good weather. So they ripped the roof off, they put the trusses in, they did the build-up to create the slope so that we had drainage, and put inside those trusses batting of insulation. So I just thought it'd be very interesting because you guys don't always get to be on the roof. Most of us don't. So I thought you guys would like to see that. If you flip to the back side of that, we did a replica of what would have been there of the fireplaces. And it's basically the wall back to back is the fireplace. These will not be working fireplaces, but they are a replica of what would have been in the house, and they did the replica out of Barclay House. And they also walked through McLaughlin House, so they did period historic replicas of that. The next page, you'll see a lot of plywood. This is the structural engineered sheeting to give stability back into the house. So you'll see the historic, where the wallpaper is, you'll see the historic boards. Some of those boards are in excellent condition. So what you see as far as the plywood, it'll be covered, you'll see the historic ceiling boards put back, but you'll never see the plywood. So this is like, when you pull the sheets back, this is the stuff you'll never see. So I thought I'd share the stuff you'll never see and let you know that we are working on the house, because once you see the house back put together, it's going to be, there'll be some things that are very visibly different, but there'll be some things that you'll have never seen if you go back in the house. So this is kind of the sneak peek. The last picture, the lighting was really poor, but that is the stairway. When you came in the front door of the Ermitinger house, you ran right into the stairs. Historically, that was changed. So we put the stairway the back the way it originally would have been, which is, so you walk in the front door and you have a wall, that's the back of the stairs. So you walk down the hallway, then you can go up the stairs. So it's a reverse placement of where the historically the stairs are now correct. So, but it's just reverse. So, just wanted you guys to see a little bit of the inside. I know you can see the outside when you drive by. We will be kind of starting back on the outside after we get the windows in. So the windows are going to be starting, I believe, about next week. Once we get the windows in, then we can go to the siding, hoping for some more great weather. This has been a phenomenal year for us. Then we'll get some painting done and get some of that buttoned up on the outside. The landscape plan has been approved. We're getting ready to do some of that. So shortly from the exterior, you'll see a lot more movement occurring.
I got a question.
Very
You say the historic tin roof, but was it original to the house, or did
That is the original roof that you can see in the photo,
is that right?
which you'll probably never get to see again. Thus, the photos.
Mm-hmm.
So I was lucky enough to get up there before they actually started to cover it. So just timing-wise, I just happened to really happen upon the right hour. So this is, I think that the contractor will have a lot more photo data that we'll compile and have in our records, but it's a rare opportunity to actually see the actual original pieces.
You have some photos that you could email out that are actually, the print on this is very hard to see. Do you have some photos of it on a computer, or really?
We have a bunch of photos on the computer. I don't have notations to all of them. I just threw this together really quickly because I thought they were of interest.
I'm just thinking, if specifically on that tin roof, that's such a historic piece. I'd love to see a picture or two that's like your favorites if you email them out.
We're only able to get 3 because of where we could walk on the on the roof.
These are the favorites.
There's one more photo, but I don't know that I want to make that one available to the public because of where people were sitting. It looks bad, but it's not. I mean, just in relation to where they're sitting and where the edge of the building is, prospectively in the photo, it looks bad, but they are actually safely away from the edge. It's one that you just don't want to throw out there because people's perception can be skewed because they're only seeing it from a flat photo.
We could blame the
versus-
photographer.
We can,
And that was me.
if you're
I'm
just
not a
asking to
professional.
have these emailed so that you can like zoom in and out on them and stuff like that, we can do that.
That's all. I was just, like this one. I'd love to, this print on that. It's hard to see.
The actual digital photo is very good, and you can delineate the
Yeah, well,
squares.
I'd just like to see one.
We'll email
I'll
those
send
out to the
that.
committee. Yeah.
It's an exciting
Yep.
piece.
And then, were you done with that's kind of the structural piece and where we're at as far as the construction. But then there's another piece to this, which is once we get it completed, then what are we doing? As you may know, previously the house was run as a museum. We have a couple of folks, Mr. and Mrs. Harding, that were very actively involved as volunteer kind of curators and managers of the house or coordinators of the house, if you will, on a volunteer basis. But we're trying to determine exactly what, going forward, what we can do. We have a lot of museums and historic places in this town that are struggling to keep the doors open. So we were fortunate enough to receive a grant directly from, without even applying. We were just offered a $5,000 grant from the State Historical Preservation Office because we're a certified local government. I think that's the correct term, and which means that we're sort of registered highly on the list of historical places with important historic things. Anyway, we got $5,000 to do a consultant study. We've already hired the consultant to do, it's a pretty fast approach to everything in terms of just kind of getting things going. But basically to do a programming and kind of a quick business strategy that would involve discussing with the key stakeholders, the folks that volunteered before. There's a friends group that is kind of organizing themselves to be supporters of the house. There are other heritage interested parties in town, and obviously the city and the city commission and possibly PRAC, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring this to you is, so over the next few weeks we're going to be doing some some meetings with some of these key kind of stakeholder groups to talk about what people envision. Part of the consultant study is also going to be to go out and study in different places in the United States some similar or at least close enough case studies that where something along these lines have been done with this historic homes or historic structures, and trying to find a sustainable program that can help pay its way or can help us as a city manage this. So we're underway and just getting going on that. And I guess my question, one was just to inform you that that's going on, so that when we get the project completed, we'll on the heels of that, we'll have a programming plan in place that we'll be discussing. And then the second part is there PrAC interested in participating in that? Are you more interested in just sort of letting that happen and letting me and having it reported back to you where we've landed, and then discussing before we do anything and any decisions are made, you'd have the opportunity. If you're interested in the kind of being involved in those focused discussions, I could certainly incorporate you into that. There's a kind of a general group that's meeting, like a heritage group, that I think if PrAC members were interested, you could probably fit into that category. Kind of wanted to see where the interest might lie with that.
Any comments? Anybody want to participate in that?
Well, it'd be nice to have a representative.
I think even just one representative would be helpful to do that. Yeah.
Anybody?
I would definitely be interested if you're not. I mean, this is somewhat of my background earlier in my life, so so that would be interesting. And I also just wanted to make the comment, excuse me, that definitely now that we have put this effort into the house, I think we definitely want to be involved in then what ultimately happens with it. I mean, we've all experienced how difficult it is to manage some of these historic properties. But I think it's something we definitely want to be involved with. And I mean, seeing some of the city commission goals, which we discussed a little bit back in the working session, I mean, I think we definitely want to maintain a certain level of control over what happens with that as something that we have put so much work into. So
Great. Any other comments?
I think I would volunteer to be in that too. That way there'd
Okay.
be two of us.
We have two.
So who am I? I've actually heard three say they're interested. What would be PrAC's choice? What's that?
I think they're fine. I mean,
Okay,
I'm
great.
involved in other historic aspects.
Okay, terrific. Just wanted to make sure I had the right names here.
You'll be showing up in costume when it opens.
Yeah, it was it's the only
Well, we have
remaining. It's the only remaining residential Hudson's Bay built structure in the Pacific Northwest.
We have two representatives, Scott, so that should.
Yep, we'll be getting. I'll contact both of you directly to let you know about any opportunities to participate there. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, what's next? Newell Creek planning. Any progress or what's going on there?
Sure, I've got an update for you. So Metro is currently working on the design of some of the alternatives for the Newell Creek Canyon that were discussed at the previous public meetings that I think some of you participated in, and also they came and gave a presentation to PrAC at one point last year. The alternatives at this point include, and what I'm giving you here is just directly what was provided to me from Metro, so this is me kind of paraphrasing that. The alternatives include options for trail layouts, which would be hiking and mountain biking potentially, parking, nature play, picnicking, and viewpoints. Those are kind of seem to be the main themes within the trail layouts. Metro right now is in the process of planning for the next public meeting, which looks to be sometime in mid to late April. So I will do my best to keep you posted on anything when it's announced, should you wish to participate. There was some delay with this process. I think some of you asked about this at a recent meeting, kind of what's happening and how come we haven't heard anything. And what I understand is that was the delay over the winter on this project was related at least partly to the fact that that Metro was waiting to close on a piece of property that they've acquired adjacent to the canyon, which has now been completed.
So,
which-
Scott, that just to let you know that I don't think that ink is dry quite yet. They still have a company down there cleaning that property, and the number of shopping carts again, and metal parts. There's an old Jeep down there that, because although there was a VIN number on it, because no ownership can be traced back to it, they just have to cut it apart and throw it in the garbage. They can't even take that to recycling, unfortunately. Until we were told by the people cleaning up the canyon, but maybe you know something different, that the sale can't go through until Metro does a final walkthrough after the garbage is removed. But
Well, I was notified directly by the key folks involved at the staff that the property had been closed on. So
okay.
I'll just leave it at that. I
Great.
don't know anything.
It's-
I don't know
and-
anything further about what you're referring to, Joyce. But I'll just leave it at that. It was reported to me from the Metro staff that they had closed.
I
But,
do
yeah.
know then that property is being cleaned
Yeah.
at this time, and a lot of stuff is being hauled out.
Yeah. So the point of that property was that it potentially could help create some better access points, or a better access point, which was really one of the key things. Is how do we get in there?
And that's at the end of
Yeah.
Warner Milne, behind Pizza Hut.
Yep.
So
Very good. So that was kind of part of the delay, was they were sort of waiting on that to complete, and then so that they knew for sure, and then that obviously is going to guide some of the design and some of those types of things. So
Great.
That's
Okay. I guess next is any other general business to come before PrAC.
nothing from staff.
All right, then, let's move on to PrAC member reports. Can we start down, Dustin, you have anything to report?
Following up on the topic of funding and all that stuff, it's been rolling around in my head a lot. Where do we get money, Scott? How do we fund this stuff? What can we do better? What other sources can we look to help you out? Any suggestions? Anybody?
Well, maybe to begin with, what might help is for me to answer that question, and we could put this on as an item on your next agenda, where I could just give you kind of a general overview of how our department is funded, so that you understand that first, and then
I think that'd be really helpful.
And then
'cause we talk about money and not having enough, and I guess me personally, where does it come from generally, and how can we maximize the inflow and reduce the outflow to try to make your job easier?
That's a great idea. And what's
Yeah.
restricted and what's not.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We've done that in the past, but it's been a while, and obviously there's newer members that we haven't really gone through the full discussion. So I will put this on your agenda next month if that's agreeable, and I'll give you kind of a brief sort of budget 101 on the Parks and Rec department, and then you can ask questions. But also, I think what you're getting at, because I know you've talked about this previously, Dustin, is the alternative funding strategies, or looking at things, and we've talked about ideas about a parks utility fee or other options to look at. So that's I think that plays into that discussion too. Okay. But we'll start at the beginning and talk about
let's get a
what we do right
foundation.
now, and then go from there. Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've got nothing else.
Thank you. Roger?
Yes, I have some items from the Pioneer Center. The Daddy-Daughter Dance was held on February 7th at the Abernathy Center. The dinner dance was the usual fun event for all, prompting one of the daughters to exclaim, "This was the best night of my life."
Wow.
I think someone else was that dance there, I think, from here.
Yeah, I was going to report on it when I got it too. You stole my thunder.
It was the best night of his life, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Going on, the Pioneer Center will be closed March 23rd to the 27th. The ballroom floor is being repaired. Carpets will be cleaned, paint touched up. The craft room countertops and floor replaced. Bathrooms in front will also have the the floors replaced. The floors in the craft room and front bathrooms are original to the building and have been in need of repair for a long time. And I have one thing here that I added, and that is that I don't know if any of you know her, Claire Met, who is the Senior Center Program Assistant at the center, will be retiring tomorrow. I just want to say her warm smile and cheerfulness will be missed by all those who use the center. And thank you, Claire, and all the best to you in retirement.
Thank you. Very nice.
Very good. Thank you. Joyce?
Let's see. I visited the Tower Vista Neighborhood Association, mostly because they had a housing development issue on their agenda that we were interested in hearing about. But at that meeting, there was a lot of discussion, again, about dog parks. And so just want to make sure that we're continuing to move forward, especially in Wesley Lynn Park, because that's where Tower Vista would have their closest access that they could walk to across the street to Wesley Lynn Park. So making sure that that happens. And there's been there was some push at that meeting that a fenced dog park be put in Oregon City as soon as possible.
Were you, by chance, able to discuss the one that landed into our proposed plan at the new Glen Oak Park?
I did mention that there was one in the master plan at the Glen Oak Park, and they said, well, yeah, that's nice, that's quite a ways away, and when is that going to be built?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I'll be giving you an update on our off-leash program in just a little bit here, a couple of minutes.
Okay, Sean?
Well, I will just say that I did go to the Daddy-Daughter Dance for my first time. We normally have a family event that always takes precedence, but this went out this year, and I just want to say it was a top-notch event, and it's important for dads to go out and show their strength and soft sides to their daughters, and I know my daughter really enjoyed it, and I actually sat next to Larry Potter and his granddaughter at the event, and I think he said it was his 10th straight. But I think those are things that we may not always see much of on our agendas, but they're high priorities because of how many people in the community they touch. And it sounds like it's also, when I explained to coworkers over in Tualatin what I'm going to, and I think they just think it's this little event in Oregon City, but I really realized that people in Milwaukee want to come to ours, and Gladstone and West Lynn, and so it's a top-notch event. And I think a lot of thanks goes to the Abernathy Center because of how they provide the accessibility to the building and how much it costs. I think they really go out of their way to make sure this succeeds. And I think if it wasn't for the Abernathy Center doing what they do, Kathy and I were talking at the event about the challenges that we would face if it came back to the Pioneer Center. Yeah. So those are things that are important to know, that civic-minded people with private businesses are also helping this go. Because the cost is right at that mark where it's probably steep for some. Yep. So I think I paid $35. My wife bought the tickets to ensure that I got them. But wasn't it $35 each or something? So
Each couple?
each couple? No, each person.
Yeah, so
it's
you
70
and your daughter.
So it was $70.
Oh.
Well, I appreciate those comments very much, Sean. We, as a staff, that's an event that you probably heard me talk about in the past. If you haven't, I take a lot of pride in that one as a department because it's a group effort with our staff. Especially credit goes to Kathy Wiseman from our Pioneer Center. Even though she's managing our senior center, somewhere along the way she said, I'll take over that event for us as a department, and just kind of spearheaded. And we've done this for, I think that was about our 10th in a row or something like that. Somewhere in there, I've lost track of either our 9th or 10th annual. It did start, we started pretty small at the Pioneer Center and then kind of grew into the Abernathy Center. And we do set the bar high, and our staff and the folks that work on that have just done a phenomenal job to make it. It's a first-rate event. It's not, we don't try to cut any corners, and it does cost money, and folks are paying for what they get, and we're hoping to provide a really good experience. And then we're fortunate to have the ability to work with such a great venue. But yeah, it's the demand for that program has reached the point where it sells out very quickly. We have a waiting list. We just put as many people as we can while still maintaining the quality of the program. We can only do one night. If we had the ability to do 2 nights, we'd sell them both out. But the center is just not available, and we have to kind of manage what we can do as a staff anyway. Yeah, we've had the it's so popular that people are waiting for the day that the registration opens, and if people that haven't gotten on that list and before it's sold out we've received phone calls from parents crying and pleading, can we please get in? And I mean it's hard because we want to accommodate everybody. I mean that's how popular it is, and it's like one of the things that people look forward to the most. So we, as a department, we're very proud of that event. We think that it's just a tremendous.
That's how I felt afterwards. Was just my involvement with PrAC and hearing about it each year. I kind of felt some sense of ownership sitting there and thinking, this is my own city, and they're doing this, and that's a really good thing. And another thing that I did 2 years ago, I had an opportunity to take my daughter out to dinner before we went to our family event, and it even spurred on that because I couldn't make the other event. So maybe there's other people doing that, and if that's the case, then it's it's kind of like the message is being delivered in an indirect way. So you guys do a great job.
Thank you, appreciate that.
I'm waiting for the Parks Department to come up with a mother and sons event of some sort.
We tried that.
We did try that. We had a mom and son bowling event for a few years while we were, when I first got here, and it had been going on prior, I think, to my coming. Our numbers just dwindled off. Didn't fly. Again, our staff is small. Kathy from the Pioneer Center is spearheading recreation events. Rochelle from the pool, full-time pool supervisors, also doing recreation, and Scott and I will pitch in here and there, and even our maintenance guys will. We kind of all pitch in where is needed, but there's only so many of us, and we can only extend so far. So we do try and keep in the wheelhouse of things that we do really well, instead of branching out to too many things we don't do very well.
Yeah, I just didn't have the numbers to keep that event going. We gave that every effort we could to make it a success, and I don't know if it's the boys don't want to do stuff, it's not as cool or cute or whatever, but it just didn't quite fly. But, yeah.
That's another note though with Kathy is, here's a lady who's had to put on this whole event. She's got all this stuff going around her, and her attitude that night probably is best summed up as excitement. Yeah. Rather than, oh no, or all this stuff happening, she was the one sitting down as the photographer taking everybody's group shots. And then she found every couple and passed their, she didn't just set them out on a table and say, go pick your pictures up. Next thing you know, all of a sudden mine just ended up on my table, and she did that around the whole place. Almost like she knew everybody in the room in some way. That was pretty neat.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, we have an initial group looking at forming the Friends of the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. I'm on that initial group. We have drafted a mission statement. We're also listing the kinds of things that a Friends group could do. There's no board yet. There's no elected board. This is just setting up the foundation on it. We do have a representative attending from the planning department. We do have a representative also from Councilor Carlotta Colette's office, as well as a regular staff member from Metro there. But there's about 4 or 5, there's about 6 or 7 of us that are involved in that process. So we do have an active Friends group that's going to be forming.
Great. Nothing from me?
My report. Just first of all, a question, Scott. You sent out an email a few weeks ago about pickleball, and I'm wondering if we need any kind of discussion or action in response to that agenda.
Was that the discussion for Ladder Park, or was that broader than that?
It had to do with Riverview Park, and they made a presentation here, of course, and then
oh, that's right.
There was an email after that with it looked like asking us for a response, and so I'm wondering what's the appropriate time that we should give a response and have that. We probably need a good discussion about Riverview Park, as that was their proposal, and the pros and cons of that, and then perhaps later on Ladderette Park, if that could be a long-term solution. But anyway, I think that should be on our agenda. Maybe maybe March if we can do it. We have a full agenda already, but sometime soon we owe a response, I believe.
And on that, having seen that email, I guess the question that came to my mind is, well, then how busy is Rivercrest Park? How are the courts there? So,
Ladderette Park?
no, at Rivercrest.
Rivercrest?
Yeah, because that was their initial proposal, was then coming in and restriping those courts to also use them as pickleball courts. Of course, it's a very nice park, and it tends to be one of the busier parks. So, for that use, so how busy is that, and how much interference are we going to have, or conflict between tennis players and the pickleball players? That's the first question that I have. So,
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of questions that I have as well. Do they have to be permanent marking, or could they be temporary? And anyway, we probably should put that on the agenda and have a good discussion about it, then have a response.
I'll put that on your next agenda
Okay.
and plan for a discussion there, yeah.
Okay.
Could we probably ought to ask the Rivercrest Neighborhood Association for input on that too.
Yes.
yeah.
I know that's my neighborhood association. I attend the meetings usually, and I know that there have been suggestions to add other events to the park, and they've been kind of reluctant to add because it's already used heavily on the courts, tennis and basketball, and especially those parks, and the spray park now. So
I
anyway,
think that's and we can get into this discussion more, but I would just kind of agree with that what I've heard, the feedback from the neighborhood there is, they appreciate all the nice improvements, and the park is terrific, and it's very well utilized. But I have heard that sentiment that they're kind of saying, okay, can we take a timeout on putting new stuff in now, and not impacting with more uses? So I know that is I agree, Doug, that's a very good point to bring up, that if there was any thought of doing that at that park in particular, we would want to discuss that with the neighborhood. Might I suggest, if you're willing to do this, is we put this on the agenda in March, see where the discussion leads. If there seems to be any interest in exploring that particular park further, then we could discuss a strategy where I would reach out to the neighborhood, or we'd figure out a way to do that. I don't want to preempt that before PrAC has even kind of vetted out the discussion, unless you have a different take on that as far as the kind of
John.
timing.
I would agree, and boy, the months are kind of blending together, but I also think that we can have a discussion all we want, but I think we're at this point waiting for a staff report on pros and cons for Rivercrest at this point, and I think we're also looking at a staff report for Ladderette Park, potential minimum cost impacts for going in and doing something, a minor overlay of the existing asphalt, whatever. I think we need to have some information before we can best make those decisions.
Yeah, I agree. I'll bring that to you.
okay, that's all I had to report.
Okay.
We are on staff reports now.
Okay. The first thing is your monthly recreation report and activities update. Denise is passing that around, the written report. So as usual, if you have any questions that come up about that, please feel free to let us know. That's just for your information. And anything else to report, Denise?
Yeah, we just finished the production for the trail news. It'll be out in a couple of weeks, so watch for the next trail news. It is also online as we upload before we actually mail. So the upload should be coming soon. With the retirement of Claire Met, we also have a new staff person that is taking her place. Her name is Jessica Spencer. So if you see Jessica at the Senior Center, she's our new gal, and we're excited to have her and excited for new things to come. And we'll let her finish being overwhelmed with the new position, and then we'll see probably a high production rate out of Jessica. We're really excited to having her. Along with our retirement announcements, Marv Kaiser is one of our bus drivers. He is also retiring next month. I believe it is March 5th. Long-term bus driver for us. He's going to be sorely missed. He's been just an absolute gem to be with us. He's not just our bus driver, but he also helps us out around the center. His positive attitude and hard work ethic has been such an asset to the Pioneer Center, so he's going to be sorely missed. Along with that, we will be hiring our next bus driver fairly soon here. I'm waiting to hear what that date and timeline looks like from the Pioneer Center. In your packets, you'll see our concerts are set for the summer concerts. We have the movie online voting. So voting for your movies in the park is also a notation in your packet, and on our Facebook site and all our media sites, we put that out there so people will vote. I think Rochelle said we had something like 145 votes already. Pool update, along with the Pioneer Center doing some updates in the Pioneer Center to some of our original components of our buildings. The pool, we've, I think, made a notation of it. It's in a previous meeting. We are permitted to do our family changing rooms and also our lobby updates that gain more ADA access through our building site. So in the packet, you'll also see the colors and some of our materials that we're going to be using in that lobby space, and the schematics for design and construction for our family changing rooms. So those will be done by the end of June. The Pioneer Center, another highlight is that we put our appeal letter out, and we have $18,000 right now from our appeal letter in funds, donation funds. So
For which program?
that one, I believe, is our Meals on Wheels. So one of Claire Metz's programs is to get the appeal letter out, and she has exceeded, I think, our donations from our previous year. So I don't know what the margin was, but I know that this is more than we've had in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an excellent effort, and it definitely serves a huge benefit to our community. Let's see. There's also in there is a packet for our funding for the parks, the revenues that we've generated for the RV park, cemetery, and reservations. So you'll see that in there as well. And again, if you ever have questions, feel free to comment or give me an email, and we can update you as we go along.
Okay, any
If
questions?
I may, I just wanted you to know that I went over to the senior center and hassled Jessica, told her she was far too young to be a staff person at the senior center.
Did you have any questions about anything Denise talked about? I've got one more item for you.
Just an excellent report, Denise. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Denise.
Scott?
And again, as always, if you have, as you're reading through that later, because we know you take that home and just devour those bits of information. If you have any other questions at any time, feel free to give us a shout. The other last item I had on the staff report was the designated off-leash dog areas that we've discussed and that Joyce was referencing again earlier. And we know there's lots of folks that are kind of anticipating this, are pretty excited about those areas getting officially opened, even though there's sort of a lot of unofficial dog areas. We are preparing to implement those three designated areas that we've talked about a number of times, and we're anticipating those being signed, which means the language that would say this is what you can and can't do, and here's the rules and the boundaries, and then we of course put in the dog waste glove dispensers and garbage cans and do all the appropriate things that we need to do. So we're anticipating having those things completed not later than the end of March, possibly sooner than that. And I'll let you know kind of a formal announcement once we get that done. And then I think it's kind of a soft opening. We're just going to put the signage up, and then we can start disseminating that news maybe sort of through the different networks of neighborhood associations, and certainly PrAC plays a role in that as you're in the community or talking to your neighbors or friends or whatever. We'll kind of just be putting that info out and probably have something by then. It'll be in the it will be up to the summer edition of our Trail News. We're a little early, and I hesitate to put a date in writing in the spring edition of the Trail News, but we'll probably put some info in there to guide folks to those areas. So it just it certainly is an issue that is a major topic for us. We receive a lot of comments and complaints about people, using our parks as off-leash dog areas, and our difficulty in enforcing those rules and trying to get that kind of dealt with. And it really will be nice to be able to say, here's a place you can go do that legally. And so we look forward to that. And yeah, that's it. No, that's it.
One more comment I did forget. March is our national event for Meals on Wheels, March for Meals. Sorry, the M's are starting to run together. So March for Meals, it is the national event for fundraising for that program, Meals on Wheels, which is predominantly for our seniors who are homebound. We have volunteer drivers that take meals out to these seniors in our area, and we are a little more extended that we serve just outside of the borders of Oregon City. We are one of the larger Meals on Wheels programs. And so if you do see that programs, we have change buckets that we have out. So if you see those, please take note. And we are looking for funds to help that program grow.
So that's also how you asked, where do we get our money? And some of it is we
beg.
We're not afraid to ask for money.
If you talk to Kathy Wiseman, we sell it by the hot dog, the $1 hot dog.
Where do you put the fund buckets?
I don't know the exact sites this year. Claire, it's one of the Claire's things, but we do them in a lot of the grocery stores. We do them at some of the local banks. So they
restaurants.
are out there.
I was at a eatery last night with my wife, and there was our March for Meals bucket right on the counter.
One here
I've
at
never
City
seen
Hall.
one.
Yeah.
Good idea.
To dinner, I guess.
Anything else?
Some coffee shops, too.
Just one thing, and it's actually pertaining to your next scheduled meeting is March 26th.
Yep.
Wanted to just call attention to the fact that is spring break week. We kind of tend to run into this every year. And I just mention that because if that's an issue for attendance for enough people, we could certainly look at doing that on a different week. Wanted to sort of gauge your thoughts on that before we.
They have a problem now, or
I may, but if I'm
Okay.
the only one, don't change it for me. I'll just change my vacation.
Well, you're allowed to miss meetings once in a while.
We may come back Thursday. We were just talking today, so I'll get here just in time.
So I'm not seeing a lot of
Well,
concern
yeah,
with that, or
it's hard for me right now. I will probably be out of town. But if everybody else can be here, that's fine.
is it possible to do an email out? See if any,
Yes. I'll
we know
do
of two already that Katie's
yeah,
not here.
I'll do a little quick poll with everybody to kind of verify and let you think on that for a week or two or whatever, and we can certainly always change that if we need to. So, but we're prepared. Staff is prepared to have that meeting on that date. But if your attendance is going to be not great, we'll want to think about that. So,
Anything else to come before the committee tonight? If not, we are adjourned at 8:50.